Hello, my beautiful mates. Captain Mitch here, back at it again. This week, we are going to take a look at the process behind my latest portrait drawing, while also talking about why this is my latest and probably the last in quite some time. I'm going to first talk a bit about the piece, how I made it, the techniques that I'm using, and then I'm going to go into why I don't want to do portraits anymore and sort of, the whole experience that I've had lately with coping with a change in style. If you want to skip to the second part, I will put a timestamp on the screen and it's also going to be in the YouTube chapters. But without any further ado, let's get into the actual technical process behind this. So, this one was pretty simple, I would say. So, lately, what I've been doing is, for some reason, I've just focused a lot on colored illustrations or like doodles of animals or animal-like creatures, very fantasy, very, children's books, all of that. And while I was working on my latest piece, which was Buddy, I just realized that, oh, damn, I haven't done a portrait in almost 3 months. This is not good. I'm not a good artistic citizen. I should have practiced so that I don't get out of shape. And with all of that said and done, after I finished Buddy, I started this. And the process behind deciding what I wanted to draw is pretty straightforward. It's a portrait study, essentially. I was doom scrolling on Pinterest and I found this very, very cute photo of a lady holding a chick. And I liked it for honestly 2 reasons. So first off, I liked it because the model doesn't have that sort of like typical Instagram, Pinterest face that you usually tend to see on the platform. And I really like that. I like that in my artistic expression. I just find it more interesting to draw people that don't look the same. So that checked one box. And then the second box was a bit more personal. It's about the fact that if I were to guess, I think that she's Eastern European, and the reason why I'm saying it is because of her hair cover, her headdress? Yes, headdress. And I really like it. It struck a chord with me because I am Eastern European, and I thought, okay, this is a very nice homage, I guess, to my upbringing. Now, after doing the sketch, I decided, given that this is a pretty straightforward portrait, it might be worth challenging myself and trying a new shading method. And while I was browsing YouTube and sort of looking at other artists, I stumbled across a tutorial by Josh Art. I'm gonna put it in one of the cards above so you can check it out after you watch this video, of course, on how he shades portraits. And I found it very interesting because I really like that sort of almost airbrushed charcoal look with a mix of hard edges. It's like it's an interesting mix really between soft shading, the one that you'd find in nature, but then also it brings out some of that graphic element, almost cartoony. I wanted to try it for myself, so that's what I did. The technique that he presents in his video is very much centered around hatching, but what he suggests is that instead of doing hatching in straight lines, you would hatch following the shape of the form that you are depicting, which I've seen other artists do, but I don't do it, so I decided to try it as well. Now, how I translated it onto this drawing was by creating a system for myself. What I did, and what you actually saw at the beginning of this video, is I started by laying a very thin layer of graphite powder using a very dense brush to mark where the light and the dark area is. on the overall portrait. Then, as I went into more specific sections, I did the exact same thing but with a smaller brush. And then over that, I defined the planes using hatching. Furthermore, in the areas where I felt like, oh, I need some more oomph to it, I also went back in with an 8B pencil and I literally did line art. And I found that very interesting. You'll see it especially in the outlines of the headdress later on. It's a really cool way to add contrast. And the way I did it, at least, is I did this line art after I did my normal hatching shading. And then right in between the hatching area and this line art, I also added just randomly areas of complete white using my eraser. And I feel like I really dig this graphic look. I'm very happy that I managed to understand how a lot of these great artists achieve this airbrushed charcoal look, and I feel like, I still have it. Maybe not as detailed as 3 months before, but, I'm happy with the result. And before you come at me in the comments for why the chick is not as detailed as the girl, I did it on purpose. It is another thing that I'm working on, which is pretty much, I don't know if anyone else has this problem, but me, when I start doing something, I get stuck too much in the detail, and every single piece of any illustration or drawing that I do ends up being hyper detailed, which sort of drags the eye away from the central point of focus. And so in this piece, for example, I decided I'm going to go absolutely ham on the shading, the texture, the contrast for the subject, the girl and her headdress. And then for the hand and the chicken, I'm just gonna keep it minimal just to see how it looks. And I feel like I still have a bit to play around in this area of like balancing a lot of detail with not so much detail, but I really recommend this exercise because it's really good at forcing you to determine, okay, what do I want my viewer to focus on? Where do I want to invest most of my time? And if you feel like you would want a more quote unquote efficient creative process, this will also help. Cool. Now that I have pretty much explained the entire process behind this drawing, you can continue looking at it, but I will dedicate the second part of this voiceover to explaining why I think this will be my last portrait for quite a while, and explaining essentially why I think this is such an important topic to talk about that warrants a video. Now, what I actually want to talk about, to cut to the chase, is art style. More specifically, how, a lot of people are super focused on developing their art style and keeping an art style and having something very trademark to them. But at the same time, I feel like people don't talk about outgrowing your current art style and how frustrating and saddening that might feel. Now, as a background on me and my artistic practice, I am a self-taught artist. And you know that if you're a self-taught artist, you gravitate towards where most of the information is. And when I started doing art, most information lied in the area of creating portraits. Obviously, portraiture is something very popular, and it has always been popular in art. And so, as a fledgling developing artist at the tender age of however old I was, 7, I decided, I am going to do portraits. And portraits I made. When I restarted my art practice, soon after I got my first job, I started where I was comfortable, which was portraits, because up until now, as I said, I was only doing portraits. I was learning technicalities, I was learning anatomy and all of that, but it still wasn't I feel like it wasn't hitting a chord. And initially, I thought it was because the drawings were too simple, so I tried to make them more detailed. I tried to make them more complex. And although I was challenging myself and whatnot, it still didn't work out. And it really got me thinking, because not only I didn't feel alright, but when I stepped back, after I finished this drawing that I poured my time into, it sort of felt soulless. It's sort of like, you can tell the difference between, I don't know, your grandma making you a sandwich with love and then buying a sandwich from the corner shop. It's that sort of thing, like the intention behind it shines very differently. Now, after some introspection and discussions with my partner, I sort of gathered that my theory was right. I don't think this is where I shine the most, and not necessarily where my artistic sensibilities lie. The decision to move on was very difficult because obviously it's twofold, really. First off, it is sort of stopping this thing that I've been working on, meaning portraits and portraiture, for such a long time. I'm stopping it, which sort of feels like, oh, all of my work has gone to waste. And then the other one is I'm worried that people will not like what I'm doing because maybe it's not as digestible as portraits. Let's take these questions one by one. First off, the question of throwing all of your progress away because you're choosing to change gears. What I realized, and what I've seen a lot of art teachers say, is that no matter what you do when you practice art, you will always take that fundamental knowledge with you. And I truly believe in that. I mean, think about it, right? When you start art exercises, they make you draw cylinders and spheres and cubes. And I know a handful of people that draw cylinders and cubes like for the rest of their life, and that's their artistic expression, right? But it's about the fundamentals. If you're a portrait artist and you want to switch gears, you're not throwing away anything. You've learned so much about lighting and about setting the mood and about very complex shapes, my friend, because the face ain't easy to draw. And you can take that along your journey. So that's the first thing. The second thing of I'm afraid that my art direction might not be as digestible as something as widely spread as portraits. If you feel like this, quite frankly, I don't know if people will like your art direction. However, what I know, and I can tell you for certain, is that you will stand out because your art direction is yours and what you choose to do is completely yours. And that will inadvertently drive a certain crowd towards you, which is great. Second off, it's really about you in this situation. It's your artistic practice, especially if you are a hobbyist or if you're doing this and not working for someone else's artistic vision. If you don't feel good creating, then what's the point of it, because there's a difference between feeling challenged and grinding your gears, between being in a situation where you don't quite get it right but you're just in there completely sucked into the process wanting to get it right, and feeling like you are a piece of crap, a plastic bag drifting through the wind wanting to start again, So so I would say don't be worried about whether or not people like it, because trust me, the intent and the passion behind it will always shine and your art will gain soul. Yes, it might not be as academically pretty as some other pieces of yours, but it will gain soul, and I feel like that's so important. If you have soul, you will touch other souls, and this is what I tell myself. Now, in terms of next steps, I feel like I've come pretty much at terms with the fact that I've learned a lot from portraits, but it's time for me to move on. It is not an easy process. It's been really complicated. Obviously, I'm oversimplifying this. Like, genuinely, if you want me to make a whole, like, 1 hour video, let me know. Because for some reason, people don't talk about how it feels to lose or give up your art style, which is honestly, it's quite a handful. I didn't expect it to be like this. But yeah, next steps, I feel like just letting my hand run wild and letting my mind run wild would be the best choice for me for now, and sort of going in a direction that I want, and then throughout my process taking steps back and finding ways of improving upon whatever I'm creating. If you're feeling like this, I would say I get you. It feels like you're betraying yourself, you're betraying your work, you're betraying your craft by choosing to change courses. It can be very complicated, honestly. But in the long term, if you keep on doing things that you can tell that you don't resonate with, you will hurt yourself. But overall, I have trust in you, and I have trust that even if you don't do something that's stereotypically, considered trendy in terms of art, you will still find your voice, you will still find an audience if that's what you wish, but moreover, you will find peace in your art practice, which in my opinion is the most important thing, because when you are in a peaceful state, that's when the best ideas come around. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Excuse my excessive rambling, but I really felt like I had to share this with you. I'll see you in the next one. Toodles!